So today we're looking at the new GTX 950 StormX Dual Edition from Palit, or is it Palit? I'm not sure, to be honest. Starting with the unboxing. Here's the box. We've got the usual stuff on it. Some of the major new things are labelled right here on the lower side of the box. GameStream, GameWorks, G-Sync and DirectX 12. If we spin it around, you can see on the back where you can see the usual marketing stuff, performance increase over previous generation and new game effects, etc. On the other side we have technical specifications in many different languages that are odd in that they don't actually appear to include any technical specifications. And on the top of the box there's a little bit about the ThunderMast overclocking software. So let's get this unboxed. It doesn't take too long as there's no adapters or stickers or anything like that, just a quick start guide and the driver disk that I would recommend just downloading anyway. Okay, so while you're watching it being unboxed, let's talk specs. The GTX 950 is based on the second generation Maxwell architecture, the GM206 to be precise. This is actually a cut down version of the one used in the 960. It features 768 CUDA cores, that's 128 more than the 750 Ti and 256 less than the 960. So just shy of being in the middle, and it's the same story with the texture units, 40 for the 750, 48 for this and 64 for the 960. Although it does have 32 ROPs, the same as the 960. It comes with a base clock of 1064 MHz and boost clock of 1241 MHz. Although with GPU Boost 2.0, this is largely irrelevant as it will boost way higher than that. It has 2GB of GDDR5 memory at 6610 MHz effectively and a 90W TDP. So let's go on the physical tour. Starting with the rear I/O, it has one DVI-D, one DVI-I, one DisplayPort 1.2 for 4K, and HDMI 2.0 allowing for 4K at 60 FPS, a big advantage over its Team Red competitors. The shroud for this card is what stands out mostly to me with this nice blue finish, a welcome change from the normal black or red that seems to go with most things nowadays. For cooling, this card has two 80mm turbofan blade design fans designed for maximum airflow and pressure, though I've never known fans to not be designed for that, so. They blow directly onto an aluminium heatsink below. It's worth noting there are no heat pipes in this design, it is all just one big heatsink. On the end of the card there is a 6-pin power connector, and on top there is one SLI finger allowing for a two-way SLI, something I may well try out sometime in the future. And on the back we see it has a disappointingly brown PCB that doesn't do wonders for the aesthetic, but at least the front looks good. The dimensions of this card are 215 by 112 by 40mm, so dual slot card. This card features 0 decibel technology, something that most Maxwell cards now support, which basically means the fans do not spin up or make any noise unless the GPU temp surpasses 60 degrees. So during normal web browsing and other light activities it will be totally silent. As you'd expect, it has support for all the usual Nvidia technologies, in no particular order. Nvidia Dynamic Super Resolution, not something I think you'll be using too much on this card. Nvidia MFAA, which is an anti-aliasing technology that's much lighter on the GPU. Nvidia GameWorks, Nvidia GameStream, Nvidia G-Sync, Microsoft DirectX 12, GPU Boost 2.0, Adaptive Vertical Sync, Nvidia Surround, support for up to 4 concurrent displays, Nvidia SLI Ready, as I mentioned before, Nvidia CUDA technology, PCI Express 3.0, OpenGL 4.5, and OpenCL support. Right, so let's get down to the benchmarks. Now my criteria for these was to try and get the highest settings possible without dropping much below the 40 frames per second mark, and ideally staying closer to 60 FPS, at 1080p of course. To that end, I also overclocked the hell out of this thing, achieving 1230 MHz on the base clock and 7200 MHz effective on the memory. Though of course, again with GPU Boost 2.0, it was going over 1400 MHz on the boost clock, so yeah, there's that. One thing I'd like to point out is this card is very much geared towards being quiet rather than cool. With the overclock, I was nearing the 80 degrees mark, although the standard fan curve is very conservative. I'm really conservative, so it was getting to 80 degrees or so, but the fans were only getting to around like 50%, maybe just over. But I didn't experience any throttling during testing, and I did test it inside a case and not on an open test bench like some people do. All these tests were done at 1080p using my trusty old 4770K at 4.4 GHz and 32GB of 1600 MHz RAM. Okay, so I started with Unigine Valley, mainly to show the difference between the overclock and stock, and it's had 133 more score, if that means anything. So anyway, games. Dragon Age Inquisition at medium settings, using the in-game benchmark, it was easily able to achieve well above 60 FPS. At high settings, at stock and overclocked, it didn't reach 60 FPS, but I'd say it's still pretty playable as it's not dipping down too much. F1 2015, also using the in-game benchmark at high settings, it can easily stay around the 60 FPS mark. Interestingly, the overclock made a lot less difference in this game. We only got a gain of around 2 FPS, so that was pretty strange. Very high settings does dip below the 40 FPS mark, but it didn't look jerky and it played okay, so yeah, I think it's going to be alright. Far Cry 4, overclocked at very high settings, it stays above the 40 FPS minimum. Yeah, it runs very well on this card. Even if you keep it at stock, frankly, you're going to get a console beating experience, that's for sure, I promise you that. I would add that ultra settings in this game they're a no-go. It just doesn't have the VRAM inside it to be able to deal with all those textures. Now, GTA 5, not one of my favourite games to benchmark, because not only does it take just an insane amount of time to load, even on an SSD like I've got on mine, and also when you change any graphical setting, it makes you restart the game again. So yay! That was great. It doesn't have any kind of low, medium, high settings like that. You have to like a huge screen of menus, a huge menu screen showing you all the different settings. So what I did to get like a standardized setting, I used the GeForce Experience. Someone has to. And I went to optimize, so at stock at optimize we were staying well above the 60 frames per second mark, so that was okay. If we hit on an overclock, bump up those settings a bit, we can still remain very playable and looking good and not losing too much, though of course it is dipping below 60 FPS. I should say my benchmark is just basically starting at Franklin's house in the mountains and driving all the way to the airport as fast as possible. Not crashing. A little bit of crashing. Okay, so Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor, using the in-game benchmark once more. At all settings it seemed to dip down towards the mid-30s mark. I actually suspect this is something to do with the benchmark rather than the card, so I believe it did that with my 980 as well, so yeah. Overclocked at very high settings, I found it perfectly playable. I did some running around fighting to confirm because frankly I don't trust the in-game benchmark, but I'd always use it because I'm not really good at benchmarking, guys. Once again, this game, using ultra settings is a no-go. It just needs way too much VRAM to be smooth. Right, okay, Rocket League, one of my favourite games at the moment. I did a Chaos 4v4 match at the highest settings. At stock and overclocked, they both stayed pretty close to 60 FPS, and even at stock it only dipped down to 45, so if you were using a G-Sync monitor it would be absolutely fine, so yeah, I'll take that as a win for this one. Finally, The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. Now this is a demanding game, so let's lower those expectations a bit and say that we're not going to be hitting 60 FPS, not unless you just tank every setting down to the bottom, and then we don't want to do that, do we guys? But at medium settings, with an overclock, we got some good results, or some playable results, and let's face it, it's better than a 30 FPS capped console. Yeah. So there we go. This card is aimed towards playing games at 1080p at high settings, and it does that with aplomb. Interestingly, I did see a review on the 950 recently from a much bigger tech YouTube site, and they were a lot of the time referring to MOBAs and stuff like that. Now, to me, this card is aimed at sort of the console killer type market. I think, for the record, if you want to use this to play like League of Legends or Dota 2 or Heroes of the Storm, you've got no trouble, like no problem at all. It'll probably do it at over 120 frames per second, so there's no worry about that. But of course, while this card does perform very well, there is one little issue with it, and that's its price. Currently, it's £129.99, and that puts it extremely close to its bigger brother, the 960. Now, the 950 is a very cheap card for Nvidia to make, so there is definitely the possibility of them dropping the price in the future. But, well, let's face it, that's not how Nvidia roll, is it really? I can't see that happening, or at least not anytime soon. So yeah, overall, I think this is a pretty damn good card if you're looking to play games at high settings at 1080p. Okay, thank you guys for watching. Hit that subscribe button down there to never miss a new video, and even maybe hit the like button if you like this video, you know. Let me know in the comments what you think of the 950. Do you think it's worth it, or would you just like pay an extra £10-20 for a 960 for the full fat GM 206 experience? Yeah, let me know. Check out our affiliate link in the video description below for TourGuard VPN if you're looking for a decent VPN. It really does help us out, and in fact this card, this one right here, was bought partially with money from that, so anyone who signed up with that, thank you very much. I really do appreciate it. Thank you again for watching, and I will catch you later.